Thank you so much for being here, Liam, with us and doing this. As you know, this project is about increasing awareness and decreasing stigma. So I was wondering if you'd be willing to introduce yourself for us.
Yeah, sure. So my name's Liam. I'm from near Cambridge in the UK. And I've been battling with food addiction or binge eating, and sort of high fat, sugary processed foods for many years. I'm aged 36 now, and it feels like I've battled with it all my life. But for the last few years, it's become, I'm manageable, and it's kind of taken over every aspect of my life. So I'm really putting more effort in than ever to try and recover from this illness. That's where I am, really.
Awesome. And so I'm really looking forward to hearing, what was life like before you started recovery? Can you kind of paint us a bit of a picture, like what early days or before any of this journey really started? What was that like?
Yeah, sure. So as I said, I'm 36 now. I don't think I'm really truly invested in kind of a recovery program community fully. I had sought various forms of help before over the years, but I hadn't really what I would say sought full recovery and really actively looked at it and made it a priority until maybe a couple of years ago. So up till a couple of years ago, and even up to up to a couple of years ago when I saw real help, and up till very recently, even in recovery, because I'm not recovered yet. Some days I am, but the illness is still there. It was really bad. It got to a point for me that all I would think about most minutes of the day was food, what I was going to have for breakfast, lunch, dinner, in between, when I could get food. And I always had an appetite. I was always the kid growing up and into my adulthood that would, I never can remember leaving anything on my plate. I would have to finish everything. Buffets, just eat everything till I couldn't move. Always been very active, so I always tended to kind of look after myself and had a high metabolism, so I've not necessarily put on the weight. And I would tend to have good periods where I'd then lose the weight, but then a bad week where I would like put on a stone or 5-6 kilos, and it was just a really unhealthy cycle. And then it got to the point where not just my physical kind of actions of eating large amounts of food, but my behaviors around that were changing as well. So not just was I thinking about it all the time, but I was, I started to do some really bizarre things, like take spoon to supermarket and, just eat really excessively and throwing things away and then going to retrieve them later and from the bin or whatever. And just being so uncomfortable on the bathroom floor, in pain from eating and then trying to still cram in more food when it relapses a bit. And, I'd started to get physical damage and have a couple of bouts of gastritis where I'd inflame my stomach lining from too much bad food. And it was just making me really, exacerbating anxiety, stress, overthinking. It's costing quite a bit of money as well. And it just became so unmanageable and so unhealthy mentally and physically that I got to a point where, I absolutely needed help, and, and I've sought that help, and I feel like my recovery is kind of getting better, but you have to look at it as a whole 2-year period, because it's ups and downs, but overall the trajectory is up, and seem to be getting better, which is good. But yeah, that's what it before. To sum it up in a sentence, really, before recovery, it was just totally unmanageable life, depressing, anxiety driven, overthinking, didn't socialize as much. I'd start missing social events that I'd never miss just so I could go and eat. Yeah, it just made me really, really low, really unhappy. And it was time to make it a priority in my life.
Yeah. And when you say that, it makes me wonder, everybody kind of, and I shouldn't say everybody, but it seems like a lot of us have this kind of like aha moment, or this something that it's like enough is enough. A line has been drawn in the sand. Did you have an experience like that? Did you hear something that made it click, or did something happen that made you say, now's
Um,
the time?
I'd say I've had like different aha moments that, you know, my first, aha moment, I guess, was in terms of thinking, I need to sort this out. This is a serious problem. I have to get help. This is beyond normal overeating that people do at a barbecue or a social event. Was when my behaviors started to change as well, like taking the spoon to the supermarket and, not leaving my house for 3 days, just eating takeaways and obsessing about when I could get to food. And yeah, like eating beyond discomfort. So that was like my first aha moment in terms of, right, I need help. And then I guess in recovery, I've had what I thought has been several aha moments that I've thought, right, this has been so bad, this relapse, this time, that I've hit a new gift of desperation low. And I fully accept as of this moment that I cannot have these foods that trigger me to overeat, which is sugar, flour, processed food, artificial sweeteners. I will never touch them again, because that pain and that feeling mentally and physically was so low, so bad. I would do anything in this world, anything in this life right now to never have that again. So I think, right, that's my aha moment. I know I'm not touching it again. But then the nature of this illness is you have a few good weeks and you forget that pain, you forget that discomfort. Well, you don't forget it, it was painful because you're not experiencing it at that time. The illness creeps in. You think maybe you can handle it again, and every time I can't. So I think along the way, that's where I've had relapses. But recently, I think since I've made a transition just from eradicating sugar to also eradicating other refined food products like flour, physically I felt a lot better and I've had less cravings. So I guess that was my latest aha moment, was changing my food plan to have a realization that, oh, hang on, if I don't touch these refined high GI foods, then it's going to be a lot easier for myself, and I won't have that mental twist, that trigger, that obsession, and that physical craving. So it's still a challenge every day. It's not like, aha, I've cracked, I've had that moment now, I've cracked it and I'll never pick it up again. It's still like every day I have to live in the moment, live in the present. But yeah, so it's kind of been several aha moments along the way, but nothing kind of, not this like one huge moment yet.
No, you're right. No, and the thing is like there's no right or wrong answer there, right? Everybody has their own journey, their own story. And I think that's really helpful for somebody who maybe has had a similar experience to, like, there was no one big thing. They didn't end up in the hospital, or they didn't like read a book that just all of a sudden everything changed. It sounds like it's been this kind of series of events where for whatever reason you've kind of woken up to something and decided something needed to change.
Yeah, and I think just to sort of briefly add to that, I think it's everyone's like moment that they have to get to in addiction, in binge eating, in terms of their low. They think, oh no, surely I'm low enough now, I'm going to accept what I have to do in recovery to stay well. And then they relapse and they go, and then next time it's even worse and they go lower, and you think, okay, maybe I need to go this low. And I think everyone's kind of desperation point and aha moment comes at that kind of real low point, and not everyone is, you're not quite sure where that is sometimes. So I feel like, oh, now I'm at that low point and I haven't been, and something, I've relapsed and it's been even worse and I felt even more terrible. And so I just hope that I've had my last gift of desperation low point, and I'm on a good trajectory now, which I do feel like I am. So I feel like I'm improved my mental health, which is allowing me to, stay more focused emotionally every day to avoid the triggers and picking up the food.
Yeah. So can we talk a little bit about early days in recovery, whether it was after the first kind of like, oh, something has to change, or maybe just since the most recent one, like how hard was it in the beginning to start making the changes that you know that now that needed to be made? And how did you find like the momentum or the strength to keep going? Like, can you talk to us a bit about that process?
Yeah, sure. So when I first started in recovery, sought help a couple of years ago, it was with podcasts, community groups, but predominantly 12-step programs. And I found it difficult to start with because it wasn't something I was familiar with and I could identify with in terms of a lot of the readings in the 12-step programs and the spirituality of it and what spirituality meant. And it was a spiritual program, and I felt that, that meant that I had to have a faith in a certain religion, and it doesn't. And I've come to learn that they're two very different things, faith and spirituality. And however, I did continue with the 12-step program and was willing, because I was desperate, even though I wasn't finding much identification with it. I kind of would accept and could agree with everything that was written in the programs, but I found it hard to identify with the language used and feel it in my heart. They didn't feel like, I've heard people say, you need to find your people. And I think I persisted with that for maybe 12 months, like, because I was desperate, and I had some periods of good success, good recovery, and some relapses as well. It was a bit of an up and down roller coaster, but in those low moments, you asked me why I keep going. Well, I kept going because the alternative is just to be so unhappy and so low, anxious, desperate that, life does feel not worth living or unmanageable on a day-to-day basis. So you have to just get up and keep trying to help yourself and pray that one day the miracle will happen. I mean, there's various sayings I've heard, keep going till the miracle happens. And, I listen to people within these groups who would have difficulties for years and years and years. And then one day they found that moment where they found recovery for a sustained period of time. And that gave me hope. So I knew that I had those stories of hope to keep going. But I would say that I really found, I feel as though right now I found more my people for my recovery that's going to work for me when I started picking up and listening to podcasts and people within the community on Instagram and other social media and other webinars and things that I could identify with more from a language perspective. They were often giving the same messaging, same program of action, talking about emotional reactions and spirituality and food plans, but in a way that felt more comfortable for me. And I think that came with listening to Food Junkies podcasts and other podcasts that I've listened to, Unsweetened Bio and Saya and various other resources, and then reaching out to more the circle of people around food addiction in particular, and that it is an addiction. Not that 12-step programs don't advocate that it is, they do treat it in the same way, but I just felt that the program and the community that I'm currently in around food addiction, that I found with yourselves and food junkies and the people, they deliver the same program and messaging of, program of action and messaging and support that 12 steps do, perhaps in AA or those programs, but the messaging isn't so focused on words like God, and faith, and I find that this way of doing it delivers the same program and messaging, but in a way that I can identify with and it feels more logical to me and makes more sense to me. And then when I have that, I have more acceptance, and I've been able to, I think, grow and improve my recovery because I feel like I'm with my people now. Sorry for the long-winded answer.
Not at all. I think that it's, again, I just think that it's so important that people hear it's okay to have these experiences and to keep going. And nobody is saying that anything is bad and wrong, but just if it doesn't feel like a good fit, like it doesn't land for you, it's okay to keep looking for that thing that feels more authentic and genuine to you, because it sounds like in doing that, you have found something that you didn't have before.
Yeah, I would say that. I mean, sort of anyone coming into, recovery for the first time, I would say, don't give up on it too early. That's why I persisted with 12 steps. And I haven't completely vacated those, the 12-step program. I still carry a lot of the messaging and principles and have, fellowship that I do outreach within it. I take the bits that I feel are useful. But, I would say don't give up on it, persist with it, be willing. But if you've tried that for several months and you feel that you want to try something else, then do so. Keep trying different things until you find something that feels right for you, and just don't give up, because if you're as desperate as I am and I was, then you just, the alternative is it's unthinkable. So just keep going and don't be afraid to change, but also give each thing you do try, give it a fair opportunity for a considered amount of time. That's what I would say.
Yeah. So thinking about all of that, and you had kind of started out telling us what life was like before you got on this recovery journey and some of the behaviors that had started to escalate. What is life like in food addiction recovery now?
So life right now in food addiction recovery, as I've lived it the last several weeks, going into months now for the first time, I've got a good period of abstinence for me. What my life has been in that period is incredible. Like, it's what I want. I have been more productive at work. I've been more productive at home. I felt healthier, my health physically healthier. I've been more awake. I've had more hours in the day, more alert, more energized, more social, happier, less anxious, less stressed, take on more things. The list is endless. The benefits are endless, and that's the life I want every day. And it's completely the opposite of that when I'm in the food, and that's so to enable me to experience that, as I have done the last 5. Well, I think I'm on day 34 of complete abstinence now, which I know is a short period for some, but I had a short relapse before that and another good abstinent period. So it's much better place than I was, and I'm growing. But how I maintain that each day is what I've learned, is by having a routine, having a food plan that works for me, having clear guidelines on absolutely what I just cannot touch, which is, as I said, refined sugars, processed food, and artificial sweeteners and flour. And as long as I follow that, that's my first rule. I make sure that I don't leave too long before eating. I plan ahead with my food. you know, and these are always things I've thought about before, but I'm just finding it easier now because I think spiritually and emotionally I'm in a better place. And I think through the tools that we have and I've learned through the community and the program, I've been able to react differently with my emotions. And I think the biggest thing that I could say that has kept me recently feeling really good and, you know, one day at a time and on this right track of recovery each day is not to be too hard on myself or don't get overstressed and overthink things in a day. So I would typically before, you know, I would have you know, loads of things written down that I want to do or in my head that I want to do in a day. I would achieve most of them, but I would never give myself credit for achieving most of them. I would just be annoyed and stressed that I haven't done what I, you know, those other things that I wanted to do as well. And I would overthink it, overstress it, overanalyze it, that I would just work myself up to think, sod it, I'm going to go get some ice cream now. I'm going to go and eat this. And the main difference for me has been to remember to give myself credit for what I have done. Don't be so hard on myself. Be grateful for what I have achieved and what I do have, and to get rid of self-pity, because self-pity is the biggest, you know, I've heard it a million times, destructive attitude, negativity, being annoyed what, you know, I haven't done or haven't achieved when, or, you know, that it's unfair or whatever. When I've just tried to turn that immediately when I get those thoughts, I've tried to turn it straight into but I have done this and I'm grateful for this. And actually, don't be too hard on yourself. Just relax, enjoy it. Don't worry. You can do it tomorrow. It's fine. And I think as soon as I think like that, in terms of jobs I've got to do in a day or an emotional reaction to someone in a relationship, partnership, whatever it might be, I'm kind of immediately, as I get that negative, overthinking, stressful thought reaction, I'm just immediately trying to stamp on it, turn it into a positive, be grateful for what I've got. Don't be too hard on myself, relax. And that mindset I'm trying to remember to instill in myself every day. It's been the single biggest factor, I think, in having more success in my recovery this time around.
Yeah, I think, you know, it sounds like it turned from this inner critic place to really showing up with more self-compassion. I mean, would you frame it that way?
Yeah. Yeah, I would absolutely. But I mean, it doesn't mean it's gone. Like, I mean, I've been the last 2 days, you'll laugh, but you know, we're going camping on a really good camping trip up in Scotland in about 10 days. And I've obsessed for hours, it feels like hours, it is hours, on Google on what camping kit to buy. And I've overanalyzed and overthought everything to the point that I was just not making a decision and I was really indecisive, overthinking it, started to get stressed, wasn't getting on with my other jobs because I was too focused on this, all or nothing thinking, and still not having a decision, then having stressful reactions to my partner and whoever's around me, and so it's still there. But I was able, after doing, you know, recognizing that, probably a bit late in the day, but after recognizing it's just getting silly now, and this is harmful behavior that I'm aware of, that I do in the past that can lead me down that route of relapse. I just made a decision and I feel good about that decision. I've forgotten about it and I've moved on. So I'd need to become better at that. I'm learning, but yeah, that's just an example of, you know, I guess it's still there. I'm just trying to on a daily basis, change my reaction, change my thinking. Hopefully it'll instill a more, in time, it will be more of a natural reaction because I've trained my mind to think in that way.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it definitely sounds like it's progress over perfection. So you're still a work in progress, as we all are. And you're
Mm.
noticing, like, oh, okay, it's still showing up. What can I do to work on that? And you're finding a way through. And it may not happen overnight, which we would all love,
Yeah,
but
I
it's
know.
getting there, right? Yeah, for sure.
It's getting there. It's been the biggest battle of my, I mean, it is the biggest battle of my life, like absolutely the biggest battle of my life. And that's why I have to give it, and I am giving it everything I can. And I won't let it win, but it's not a switch. Like you say, it's not something you just conquer overnight. So anyone that, keeps relapsing, don't worry, because, I've relapsed 1,000 times, but you just got to keep being willing, keep the hope, and keep trying to find the solution. And one day, I truly think if everyone keeps looking, one day, you'll get it. And I'm not saying I've got it now, I've only got it for today, but I am making that progress. Like I say, I'm having less relapses, and abstinent periods are becoming longer, and I'm changing my mentality. I'm having more acceptance around my food plan. I mean, I'm realizing that, even with exercise, I was all or nothing with that. I would run excessively, then not run at all. And now I'm just trying to maintain consistency with what I do in terms of exercise, not too much, not too little, but it's part of my program. Yeah, so that's where I am.
Amazing. So would you be willing to kind of take us through a day in the life of Liam? Like what are the things you need to do for your food addiction recovery daily? Do you have some sort of routine, or do you have like some non-negotiables that have to happen to make sure that you stay in today and it's protected, that recovery? Or yeah, talk to us about that.
Yeah, I do have a routine. A routine protects me from overthinking and all those traits that, if I let them fester, will lead to me obsessing about food and wanting to eat and relapsing. So I do like structure and a routine. I think it's important. I will typically wake up. One of the things that I will do, or I find helpful sometimes to do, is first thing in the morning is just I read a daily reflections email, which is part of like a 12-step program, but it's on a website, and you subscribe and you get an email every day with just a very short kind of spiritual paraphrase. And it's always, thought invoking, and helps recovery. So it just immediately puts a good thought into my head about, my intentions for the day, or to be positive with the day. And so yeah, I tend to do that. I will always ensure that I have breakfast. Once I wake up, I'll never skip breakfast, because I have 3 set meals a day. I know a lot of people say 3 set meals a day, nothing in between, but I don't say nothing in between. I tend to have my 3 meals a day, and that's enough. If I have anything between, it's because I maybe had a smaller meal at lunch or whatever. But I find it important for me not to weigh and measure, or obsess, or overanalyze about what I'm eating. I just have to have clear rules, but simple rules. And as long as I stick to that, then I'm okay, because I'm not what I would call like a volume eater, in the sense that I'll eat 10 tons of broccoli if it's there. I won't. As long as I avoid the foods I know trigger me physically and mentally, then I don't need to weigh and measure. I'll just have an abstinent meal, and it's fine. And I don't feel like I need to overeat on that abstinent meal. So yeah, I wake up initially, do my daily reflections email. I will think about my day ahead. Initially, I might even think about my day ahead the night before, and in my notes pad, I will write 5 or 6 things that I want to do. That doesn't mean I've got to do them all. It used to, but it doesn't anymore. It just means that it gives me a purpose and a structure, what I want to achieve the next day. I might do that the night before or the morning. So I read my email, positivity, have some breakfast, look at what I want to do for the day, and then I start attacking that day, but with a mindset of not rushing, not overthinking, overworking. If I don't get it all done, it doesn't matter. Always, every day, I try to get some form of exercise in, usually running. Always makes me feel good, always puts me in the right frame of mind, protects me from that meant that mental state which can put me into the food. You know, it just releases such a positive endorphins and that serotonin that I just feel great afterwards, and I don't want to even go near any bad food. So that is really important. And if I can't run, even just a walk, you know, anything, it's really important I do that, but not overdo it, not underdo it, just get it done. I will always avoid going to a supermarket hungry, or, you know, if I'm for a prolonged period of time, if I haven't eaten, which I'm careful not to have a prolonged period of time, but I would always just be mindful of when I'm going to a supermarket. If I'm having kind of an unusual day and it's not so familiar in terms of my normal structure, then I'll always try and plan ahead. So if we're eating out at a restaurant, I'll look at the menu beforehand and make a choice there and then. At home, I'm having that when I get to the restaurant, so it's, I don't have to think about it, and it's a lot less stressful that way. Same if I go to like a social occasion, I'll decide, you know, I'm having one plate of abstinent food and that is it, whether it's, you know, buffet, barbecue, or whatever. Yeah, so I used to also write, you know, a gratitude list at night. I don't do that now, but I do. I think it's great. I think a lot of people do it, but I certainly think along the lines of what I am grateful for. You know, in my head, I try to incorporate that into my day a lot. The other thing I try to do as much as possible is just be in my day, is just be as giving as possible to other people, help as much, you know, live outside of myself as much as possible, be unselfish as much as possible, because I think those actions, you know, they give that same feeling of, you know, helping others is really, you know, those chemicals that get released when you help others, it feels fantastic. And if you can do that, you know, it really builds, I think, a good defense against those negativity thoughts and things that get you into food. So yeah, they're the sort of things that I do. But in terms of a structure, it's just read my email, make sure I have my 3 meals a day, make sure they're planned as well. I'll always know what I'm having generally for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Don't stray from that. Always get some exercise in every day, keep busy, and try and do some outreach, stay accountable. On one other thing I do every day as well, every meal I take a photo of my meal and I send it to my dad just so I'm accountable. He's in AA, and so he understands addiction, and if it's not so he can jump on me, it just makes me feel accountable, and I like doing it. So and I heard that because others have done similar things with apps, and it just makes you accountable. So I like to do that, and that's really important. I do that every day. But that's it really, and just to keep everything I spoke about, just to keep, so it's that structure of emails, food plan, photos, exercise, but also incorporating a mindset of gratitude. Don't be too hard on myself. Trying to stay positive rather than negative with my reactions, and just have faith that everything will work out in the end. Don't get overstressed with things that I can't do. You know, it'll all work itself out in time. I think living that structure and those guidelines is, yeah, what's helped me where I'm growing at the moment.
That's amazing. Let me throw a curveball question in there though.
Yeah.
Have you ever been a person that struggled more in the late afternoon evenings, where maybe you did great early in the day and then it kind of fell apart at night, or was that never a part of your story?
Yeah, so I would say 90% of my relapses would happen between kind of midday and dinner time, between lunch and dinner. And that's just my circumstances, because I wouldn't be able to do it after dinner or after my girlfriend gets home, because it was always something that I would do in isolation. And as soon as she was home, it wasn't just that I couldn't do it, so I didn't do it. It was I didn't want to do it, because being in the right environment and when I'm with someone, I just accepted, I couldn't do it, and I was in a good mood. So I because she was home, so I just didn't feel the need to do it, and that's why I didn't tend to do it at weekends much either. Because I'm not saying it never happened on weekends, but because I'm more social at weekends, I'm with my friends, I'm with my girlfriend, I accept I couldn't do it and I didn't do it. So I was never susceptible to relapsing or binging or as much obsessive thoughts around food addiction in the evenings or weekends. The reason it would be in the afternoon for me is because I would wake up positive, new mindset, new day, have a healthy breakfast, start the day great. I didn't always do that. Sometimes I was in the shops at 8 in the morning picking up all the wrong foods just for a binge, but that's where it got extreme and I needed help. But generally speaking, 90% of the time I would have breakfast, wake up with the right mindset, get to lunch, have lunch, and then that would trigger something in me. It would be anything. It could be anything. I didn't have a food plan then, so I'd have some lunch. It could be sugar, flour in it, whatever. And as soon as I'd have that lunch, I would work hard in the morning. I'd got most of my day work done. I had a bit more flexibility in the afternoon to kind of more time to do what I want. I was on my own. I worked from home a lot, or I was in the hospitals. I work in hospitals, and there's always things about. But it was my quieter period in the afternoon. I'd have lunch, and so I'd be triggered physically by having something, and they'll just want something else. Or it gets 3 or 4 o'clock, and some snacks weren't going to do it, or the healthy snacks. I just got this real unhealthy habit of doing these binges between lunch and dinner, and then the more I did them, it was like became ritual, it became the norm, and then it was like I couldn't stop obsessing about it. Even if I didn't want to do it, I would obsess about it, and then eventually I would do it. So, but I know others, typically it's evening. If they're on their own, they haven't got partners, it's after the hard day's work, their mind has been present at work all day, they've been in the right environment, and they get home, and then that's their time to do it. And that's why I didn't change jobs, because I thought about changing jobs, but I didn't think that's not the solution. Because if I got a 9 to 5 job, I wouldn't binge in the day, but then I would maybe do the same. I would probably sneak away in the evening from my girlfriend to try and go and do it. So yeah, that was kind of the pattern of my eating.
Yeah, and it sounds like the daily activities that you do keep you protected from that. And then having that connection in the evenings and on the weekends really just naturally serve to protect you from that. And so that hasn't changed. You continue
Yeah.
to do those things, I'm assuming?
Yeah, I continue to do those things, and I just have to be. So my hardest period now is still in the days when I'm on my own, and in the afternoons, and I just have to stay focused, stay busy, and stay mindful, and just be watchful of any thoughts that come in that I know could lead me down that path of thinking where it becomes too late. And even though you know you shouldn't pick it up, you haven't picked it up yet, you can't stop yourself. It's going to happen at that point because you've not intercepted the behavior early enough.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Well, I appreciate your time so much and for you being here and being willing to do this. And before you go, I have one last question. What did you need to hear when you were first starting this journey?
I think I just wanted to hear that it was possible to recover. Because I think anyone that comes in is so, and I'm still, if I'm in the food, no, if you're so low, so desperate, you think you're never going to beat it. You've tried everything. It's like the last stop on the, on the road, and you feel like it's not going to work either. But I think people telling you that they were like that for years and years and years, and then they did find recovery consistently in the end, gives you hope. So I just think that's what I wanted to hear and I did hear a lot, and gave me the most hope when I first came in, that you will get there. Just have faith.
Oh, such a great message to end on. Well, like I said, Liam, I appreciate you for being a part of this campaign to increase awareness and decrease stigma. And I can't wait to check in with you in the future and see how things are going.
Sure. No, thank you as well. It's been really great, and I've enjoyed the last 40, 50 minutes or so.